Hi everybody, how are you? My name is Dan Dulac and welcome back to my channel where I am building a V10 powered Ultima Evolution convertible. This is episode number 56. If you missed any of the previous episodes, be sure to go back and check those out. We've got a lot on this build, and in fact, we're going on 5 years. It'll be 5 years in February since I started this build. Gosh, I can't even believe that. 5 years long. And we're coming close to the finish line. I wanted to wait and do this video when I actually had the car running under its own power, and as you saw in the intro clip, I in fact do. So I got a lot to share. We've got a lot to cover in this episode. Apologies for the long delay since my last video, but I really wanted to wait and do a video with the car running into its own power. You have all been so patient following me through this journey over the last almost 5 years. I really wanted to wait and do a video when you could enjoy the fruits of my labor in getting this car running. We're gonna work on some body work as well, finish up a bunch of small little projects on this episode, but alas, we are going to watch and see this car run under its own power for the very first time. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. All right guys, I've got this rear canopy all masked out, getting ready to, again, cut the holes for the fender vents. The front end of this car is completely done. Fender vents are in, put in the mesh screen behind the fans. The mesh screen here underneath is all set. So pretty much good to go. My winglets are on, all carbon fiber, skinned, and now we're getting ready to cut some more holes here. I've also got holes for the NACA ducts, so these NACA ducts are going to feed the cold air intake boxes on the rear end here. Let me show you where these NACA ducts are going to go. I've actually got them mounted temporarily just with some duct tape underneath. Let's see if I can put a light on this. So you can see up there, there's the duct. That will obviously get mounted on the underside, just like that. I'll bond it in place and cut out just the opening on the rear clam fiberglass. And then I'll just do a little elbow that feeds into the side of the airbox there. There's a 3-inch or 4-inch hole on the side of that airbox. I'll just 3D print an elbow on that NACA duct and it will feed air right into the side of that airbox. So that will be pretty slick. Won't be in the way for raising or lowering the rear clam. So I think that's going to be a nice setup. And of course, I'll do the same on the other side as well. So it gives you some insight as to what I'm going to do there. So everything masked. I've got a little bit of trimming to do here on the intake plenum. See where that green tape is, just to give me a little bit more clearance up and around so the engine can shake a little bit and not rub on the bodywork. So we're going to get to removing this panel, the rear clam, off from the car. And then what we'll do is get it outside. We don't have to worry about all the fiberglass dust and so forth. So we'll get this trimmed out and then we can fit these beautiful fender vents here and get those installed. And then paint the underside of the clam here and put some bed liner on the underside too, rubberized bed liner. And then we'll have this thing ready to install the taillights, the rear mesh on the little slats over here. And then we will have this rear end wrapped up. So let's get to it. All right, rear clam is out here, ready to get trimmed up. And then before I cut, I'm just using this profile gauge here. This is nice. I could put this on the edge to make sure that I've got the fender vent in the right location. Take the profile of vent and then come here and check it on the car. And that is gonna make a nice fit. So just a little cheap insurance. Profile gauge. I did the same on the other side. We're ready to cut. Let's get after it. that's some thick fiberglass. Take a look at that. God, that's probably 5 mils thick. That's awesome. That's quality, because that's pretty robust. Good stuff. All right, I knew it would happen. I knew it was gonna come to this. There's a wheel well divider in here, right here. So my cut line kind of straddles on the other side of this divider, so I'm gonna have to cut a little slit here on this divider, and that will make room for the vent. Off camera, I cut the other hole here, so that is done. Came out nice. The vent fits great. Now what I'm gonna do is cut the holes for the NACA ducts. So I've got a mark from underneath as well. There's a fender liner wall underneath here, and I want this duct to butt right up against it. You can see there, that continues down through here. So I'm gonna follow that. Same on the other side. We'll get these cut, then we'll flip it over, do the undercoating, the paint, so forth, polyurethane paint, and this will be getting closer to put back on the car. All right, I've just got the fender vents sitting there in place. Boy, do they look nice. It really does change the look of the back end of this car with those on there. Let's see, fits pretty well. I think I'm gonna use double-sided tape on all the edges so that they are removable, so that it'll be easy to wrap once I put a wrap on this thing. Just like I did for the front. Man, those came out nice. They look fantastic. So just 2 more holes to cut. We'll be all set for the NACA ducts for nice cold air intake. And these are the NACA ducts right here. 3-inch opening. These are matte carbon fiber. I already sanded the inside of this. There was a logo imprinted on the inside. I didn't want that, so I just sanded it off with 320 grit. This will be ready for some gloss clear coat. And then again, these will go underneath where I've got these marked. And so all you'll see is the inside edge protruding through the top of the bodywork. The bevel, the flange, will be glued from the underside, so you won't see that. So that should look pretty good. Finished air horns that go on the air boxes. 3D printed these, did a carbon fiber skin on them, epoxy, a couple coats of clear, and these are gonna go right over here onto the air boxes. So I left a hole in the air box that I made, and then I will simply glue those in there like that. I'm gonna have this opening at a 10-degree angle forward, and then the NACA duct from the top of the rear clam will feed air directly into that for a nice cold air intake. And here's the other side. This goes right in there like this. I'll glue those in, and away we go. So let's get those installed. think I'm gonna use to glue these on is just some silicone. Put a bead around this lip, put that in there, and I'm thinking, in case I ever want to remove these or change these, the silicone I'll be able to get off. Not permanent, but should be strong enough to hold that on there. Pretty snug fit, so silicone bead around the edge should work. So I'm gonna give this a shot. The air horns are in there for my nice top-fed cold air intake. And the other thing, just to remind you, I do have holes underneath here. I got a 1/2-inch hole, and these air boxes incline back. So any water that gets in there is just gonna drain out. Same on the other side. There's a hole right here in the bottom of the air box. So that should be good. Pretty psyched how those came out. And when the clam is opening and closing, I made sure, again, given the 10-degree angle, that the NACA ducts will clear those just barely when you close the clam, but still feed air in there nicely. So cool, that little project is done. All right, let me give you the latest update with the transmission. It has been quite the journey to get to where we are today. So way back, we had to take the electronic immobilizer, decode it out of the engine computers, both the primary, the master, and the slave. And in these cars, there's also an immobilizer in the transmission. So at the time we thought, well, look, we need to either decode or get a mechatronic that has no immobilizer. And so we did the latter. We got a brand new mechatronic out of a 2015 Huracan. Those were the days before they put an immobilizer in the transmission. We thought we were good to go. As we all know, over the last episodes, I'm having issues with the transmission. I purchased a CAN TCU. Turns out a fault code I couldn't get rid of was an invalid software version code, which makes sense because the primary and secondary engine computers are from an R8, the mechatronic from a Huracan, incompatible code. Long story short, I finally was able to figure out what code revision I needed on the mechatronic. Now, it did require me to get a new mech because I couldn't find anybody who could recode the mechatronic for me. So I ended up selling the Huracan mechatronic. I've got an R8 mechatronic in there, and I found a piece of paperwork that was critical to me finding out what code version I needed, because it turns out every year there's different code revisions. So that was my next task. So let me show you what I found. So this is the paperwork that I got from Kemper's Auto Recycling, based out of Germany. These are the guys that I got my engine and transmission package from, with all the OEM electronics and so forth. And in the paperwork, I found this. So this has all the details, my VIN, all the details about the drivetrain I picked up. And then I noticed this. So this is in German. This says gear number and or transmission number, and notice the 3-letter code there, RMP. So that was the key. So I went and Google searched RMP. Turns out that is exactly the code revision on the mechatronic that I need to replace. So I went and Googled and found the part number associated with this, and I got the right mechatronic. So we are gonna put the mechatronic in the car, again, in the hopes that we eliminate that invalid software code, fault code, and then we can proceed with the rest of running the adaptation, getting the transmission in order. I've since converted all of the parts. So I did have some mix of Huracan and R8 drivetrain parts in here, electronics and so forth. I've since swapped it all out to R8. So I've got the R8 shifter in there. You can see the shifter right there. And I will reprogram that for my Motec 5-button display as well. But we're going to, again, put this mechatronic in the car and see what we can do. So let's get after it. All right, guys, I've got my transmission all apart again. I've got the mechatronic out of the Huracan, a 2015 Huracan. Again, part number starts with 4T. I think that's the root of my problem. And here's the new one in the box. And this one, part number 4S. So that is the deal. Hopefully that works. So now all my electronics, drivetrain electronics in the car will be 4S matched. So no more mixing R8 and Huracan drivetrain electronics. Clearly the software wigs out when you do that. So hopefully that's the trick, and hopefully that's the lesson learned. And we're gonna get this thing installed, fire up the electronics, look at the scanner, and see what we get for new fault codes. See if that invalid software version fault code goes away that's been plaguing me. So let's get to it. All right, all back together, not a problem. Doing this a second time goes a heck of a lot faster. Know what I'm doing, real easy job actually, considering. And this is what $180 worth of transmission fluid looks like. Almost 4.5 liters or so. I'll be replacing that, I'm not gonna reuse that. So I've got some upstairs that I'll use. We'll refill the transmission, get it warmed up, make sure the level is right, and then we will see if we fixed our problem. First drive, we're getting ready for it. Get buckled up here so we're all safe. My daughter's with me. We're gonna see if we can do this maiden voyage together. She's holding the shifter because I have nothing for it. I haven't customized the electronics yet for my Motec keypad, so we're just gonna use this for now. Okay, we're buckled in. Here we go. Press start for the fun to begin. All right, we're gonna take this car out on the street for the very first time. I did get it going just out here on my side street here, but we're gonna go out on the main road here. So my son's gonna do some filming. We'll get this out on the maiden voyage on the street. So let's do it. Shift out of second gear.
Nuts.
Won't shift out of second gear. All right, it's the day after I drove this thing, and I gotta tell you, wow, what an experience. As you could tell, I couldn't get out of shift out of second gear, but I think I know why. I have a transmission code since I put the new mech in where it says the transmission is locked. I think it needs to be activated again with the Otis software. But man, I couldn't believe it would actually engage without running the adaptation, the basic settings. I was getting the transmission primed up, getting the mechatronic and fluid going through there, and I could feel the car kind of grab like it was in gear and engaged, and sure enough it was, and you saw the result. So I'm super excited. The paddles wouldn't work, it wouldn't shift out of second gear, but I achieved my goal of getting the thing under its own power out on the street before snow flies here in New England. So I was able to do that. I'm super excited. I am working on getting all of the rear end done, the rear clam, the wing, and so forth. But wow, what an experience. The car feels incredible. You're so low to the ground. The steering is great. The electronic power steering assist is fantastic. The brake assist I put in, fantastic. The brakes really grab. Really happy about that. As you saw as well, I've got to adjust the shocks, the dampening on the shocks. I've got them on their lowest setting, and I was going over a bump out here on my side street. You could see the car bounce. You could really feel it as well. So hey, we know the shocks work great. I just got to tighten them up. I think they're a 10-point setting. I've got them on the lowest. I'll crank them up to about halfway, maybe 6 or 7, firm those up good. The suspension should be dialed in nicely. I really like how this car feels, man. It is literally feels like a go-kart. I don't even have it aligned yet. I did a string alignment. That actually worked out pretty well. It drives, it tracks straight, the steering wheel's straight going down the street. So we'll get this officially aligned in the springtime. We'll be good to go down the street. And the engine runs great. Just won't come out of second gear. But again, once I get the transmission unlocked, we should be good to go and rocking and rolling. So I am super, super excited. So guys, that's gonna be it for this episode. I can't wait to show you the next one. We are finishing up the body work on this. We got tons to do on the back end. We'll ultimately spray polyurethane inside the rear clam as well to get that all finished off once I've got all the fiberglass, all the aluminum work done, get the wing mounted, get that all taken care of. We've got lots to do. So until then, we'll see you next time. Wow, what an amazing pit walk. Full access to all the pits, up and down pit lane here in Singapore. I am sweating my face off. It is super hot. It's about 90 degrees with about 90% humidity. But man, what an experience.